steam and starlight. The hot water cascading down Cade Mercer's back was the first peace he'd felt in 12 hours. Working maintenance on Celestial Haven Station meant crawling through ventilation shafts, rewiring power conduits, and occasionally getting covered in synthetic lubricant that smelled like burnt almonds. He tilted his head back, letting the steam fill his small bathroom, eyes closed in blissful exhaustion. The sharp chime of the apartment door barely registered through the sound of water and his own humming. His sister Nessa had a key, probably forgot something before her trip to the outer stations. He continued scrubbing the day's grime from his hair, too tired to care. Nessa. Ambassador Tao's office sent urgent summons. A melodic voice cut through the steam, followed by the unmistakable sound of the bathroom door sliding open. Cade's eyes flew open just as 3 figures appeared through the fog. He yelped, grabbing frantically for the shower curtain, nearly slipping on the wet tiles. "By the 7 moons," one of them gasped. "This is not the translator," another added, her voice rising in pitch. Through the steam, Cade glimpsed silver-traced skin that seemed to shimmer with inner light, crystalline patterns catching the bathroom's soft glow, and gentle violet features framed by concern. 3 pairs of eyes stared at him in complete horror, the same horror he felt standing there dripping and entirely exposed. "I'm so sorry." The tallest one spun around, her hand flying to cover her face. "We thought," the door answered, "your identification system." "Bathroom. This is the bathroom." Cade managed, his voice cracking slightly as he wrapped the curtain around himself like the world's most inadequate toga. Water continued to spray behind him, adding to the surreal chaos. "We are deeply apologetic." The one with violet features spoke softly, also turning away. "We sought Nessa Mercer, the diplomatic translator. The matter is quite urgent." "She's not here," Cade said, trying to regain some dignity while water dripped into his eyes. "She's on Station Meridian for the next 2 days. I'm her brother, Cade." A moment of horrified silence filled the steamy bathroom. The third figure, whose silver markings seemed to pulse with embarrassment, spoke gently. "We have made a terrible cultural error. Please, we will wait in the main chamber and allow you privacy. Our sincere apologies for this intrusion." As they retreated hastily, stumbling over each other in their rush to exit, Cade heard muffled conversation in the hallway mixing with what sounded distinctly like mortified laughter. He stood there, dripping and stunned, wondering what diplomatic crisis could possibly be urgent enough to result in 3 alien delegates accidentally crashing his shower. His evening had just gotten significantly more complicated. Unexpected refuge. Cade emerged from his bedroom 15 minutes later, dressed in clean maintenance coveralls and still toweling his damp hair. The 3 aliens stood clustered near his sister's workstation, maintaining a respectful distance from each other in what appeared to be acute embarrassment. They turned as he entered, and he got his first clear look at them. The tallest carried herself with natural authority despite her obvious discomfort. Crystalline patterns traced elegant lines along her temples and collarbones, catching the apartment's warm lighting. The one with silver markings that seemed to shimmer with emotion stood in the middle, her features delicate and expressive. The third, smallest of the group, had soft violet undertones to her skin and kept her gaze lowered, radiating quiet mortification. "So," Cade said, deciding humor might ease the tension. "That's one way to meet new people." The silver-marked one covered her face with both hands. "We are eternally mortified. I am Rissa, of the Lumerian Diplomatic Corps. This incident violates approximately 43 protocols of proper introduction." "Tyva," the tall one added, her crystalline patterns flickering with what might have been a blush. "Skyborne Navigation Specialist. Your door system responded to our diplomatic credentials. We assumed that my sister had programmed us clearance," the violet one finished softly. "I am Ivena, cultural scholar from the Whisperkin enclaves. The fault was our presumption." Cade waved away their apologies, tossing the towel onto a chair. "Nessa gives her colleagues access all the time. You couldn't have known I was here." He moved to the kitchen unit, activating the beverage synthesizer. "You mentioned something urgent." The 3 exchanged glances, and Tyva spoke first. "The Trilateral Summit collapsed 6 hours ago. A critical mistranslation during the territorial negotiations caused 3 ambassadors to believe they were being threatened with military action. What was meant as protective boundary was interpreted as aggressive encirclement. The talks disintegrated into accusations. "We came seeking Nessa's expertise to reconstruct the linguistic context," Rissa added, her silver markings dimming with worry. "Without proper translation, 3 species may withdraw from the peace accords entirely." Cade handed them each a cup of synthesized tea, selecting varieties his sister had mentioned matched their cultural preferences. Their surprised expressions told him he'd chosen correctly. "Nessa taught me some basics over the years. I'm not a trained translator, but maybe I can help until she returns." Ivena's eyes met his for the first time, wide with cautious hope. "You would offer assistance? After we invaded your bathing ritual?" "Everyone makes mistakes," Cade said, settling into a chair and gesturing for them to sit. "Besides, preventing an interstellar incident seems more important than my bruised modesty." As they settled onto the curved sofa, maintaining careful space between themselves, Tyver studied him with open curiosity. "Your sister described you as relentlessly practical. I see her assessment was accurate." "She also said you were kind," Rissa added softly, her markings brightening slightly. "Though she failed to mention." She trailed off, but Cade caught the unfinished thought in her expression. He felt heat rise to his face and quickly changed the subject. "Tell me about the specific phrases that caused problems. Maybe we can find the contextual breakdown." As evening deepened outside the viewport, they spread diplomatic documents across the table. Cade found himself drawn into the intricate dance of language and meaning, but more than that, he noticed small things. How Rissa's markings shifted colors with her emotions, how Tyver's confidence softened when discussing her homeworld star paths, how Ivena's quiet observations carried unexpected depth. The awkward beginning was slowly transforming into something else, a comfortable collaboration that felt strangely natural despite the unusual circumstances. When their hands accidentally brushed while reaching for the same document, the moment lingered just slightly longer than necessary. Perhaps this diplomatic crisis had brought more than just trouble to his door. Corridors of connection. Morning arrived with artificial sunlight gradually brightening through the station's viewport system. Cade woke to find Rissa standing before the window, her silver markings casting subtle patterns across the glass as she watched ships drift between docking platforms. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked quietly, not wanting to startle her. She turned, and he noticed her markings pulsed with softer rhythms than the previous evening. "Lumerians rest differently. We absorb ambient energy during quiet hours." She gestured to the view. "Your station dreams beautifully. I can feel the collective subconscious of thousands of species sleeping nearby." Cade joined her at the window, close enough to sense warmth radiating from her skin. "That must be overwhelming." "Sometimes," she admitted. "But last night, I felt something unexpected. Contentment. From you. Despite our intrusion, you harbor no resentment." Her eyes searched his face. "That is rare, Cade Mercer." Before he could respond, Tyver emerged from the guest room, stretching in a way that suggested zero-gravity sleeping habits. "Are we planning or admiring?" she asked with a playful smile. "Because if we're admiring, I should mention the observation sphere opens in an hour." "We need to gather reference materials from the cultural archives," Ivena added, appearing behind Tyver. Her violet features looked less anxious this morning. "The linguistic database in Sector 7 contains pre-contact idioms that might clarify the mistranslation." Cade nodded, already pulling up his station access codes. "I know the archivists. I can get you into the restricted sections." He paused. "And maybe afterward, if you want, I could show you parts of the station most diplomats never see." The way all 3 brightened at his offer made something warm bloom in his chest. They spent the morning navigating Celestial Haven's winding corridors. Cade guided them through the cultural districts where species from across known space maintained small enclaves of home. In the Lumerian quarter, Rissa showed him how her people created poetry through bioluminescent patterns, her markings dancing across his palm in ways that felt almost like caresses. The gentle intimacy of it made his breath catch. "It translates roughly to, 'Unexpected kindness shines brightest in darkness,'" she murmured, her fingers lingering against his. In the archives, Ivena worked with quiet intensity, but when she found a crucial reference text, she turned to Cade with such genuine joy that he couldn't help but smile back. "You were right about the metaphorical structure," she said softly. "Your sister taught you well." "Actually," Cade admitted, "I've been reading her translation guides for years. Your cultures fascinate me, not just the languages, but the worldviews behind them." Ivena's expression shifted, surprise melting into something warmer. "Most humans find telepathic species unsettling. Yet you seem comfortable. Should I not be?" She stepped closer, and he felt the softest brush against his thoughts, not intrusive, but like a question gently asked. He didn't pull away. "You are different," she whispered. By afternoon, Tyver insisted they visit the observation sphere. In the zero-gravity chamber, she taught Cade the basics of skyborne movement, using momentum and grace rather than force. When he fumbled and began spinning helplessly, she caught him with effortless precision, pulling him against her as they drifted through open space. "You trust easily," she observed, their faces inches apart as stars wheeled beyond the transparent dome. "Should I not?" he asked, echoing his earlier words to Ivena. Tyver's crystalline patterns flickered with something intense. "Most would be more guarded, especially after such an intimate introduction." "You're not the first people to see me at my most vulnerable," Cade said. "But you might be the first to seem genuinely sorry about it." Her laugh was bright and unrestrained. "Oh, we were sorry. But I confess," she pulled them into a slow rotation, perhaps not entirely regretful. Breaking through ice. The storm broke 3 days later during a state dinner Derin was required to attend as part of his official duties. He sat at the lower tables among minor officials and visiting scholars, carefully avoiding even glancing toward the high table where Seraphine presided with her usual composed elegance. They'd perfected the art of public invisibility to each other, protecting their secret through studied indifference. But Lord Chancellor Bevren, the princess's chief advisor, had been watching more carefully than they realized. "Princess Seraphine," Bevren announced during a lull in conversation, his voice carrying across the great hall. "I've noticed the Southern cartographer has been granted unusual access to the private sections of the palace. The North Tower Archive, specifically. Might I inquire about the nature of his extended research?" The room quieted. Derin felt his blood turn cold as every eye shifted between him and the princess. Seraphine's expression remained perfectly neutral, but he could see the slight tension in her shoulders. "Master Ashford has been cataloguing historical boundary maps that require cross-reference with astronomical charts," she replied smoothly. "The North Tower houses both collections. I saw no reason to restrict his access to materials relevant to his commission." "Of course, Your Highness." Bevren smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Though some might wonder why such research requires consultation after midnight. The tower guards have noted his unusual hours. The implication hung in the air like poisoned smoke. Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. Derin watched Seraphine's mask threaten to crack, saw the flash of fear quickly suppressed. In that moment, he realized the depth of danger they'd stumbled into, not just social scandal, but potential treason. A commoner secretly meeting with the crown princess could be construed as conspiracy, seduction, even assassination plotting. "Lord Chancellor," Derin stood, his voice steady despite his hammering heart. "If my working hours have caused concern, I apologize. In the South, we keep different schedules. I meant no impropriety and have maintained complete propriety in all my duties. If my presence in the palace has become inconvenient, I'm prepared to conclude my work and depart." It was a calculated risk, offering to leave before accusations could solidify. But before Bevren could respond, Seraphine rose from her seat, and the entire hall fell silent. When the crown princess stood during dinner, everyone paid attention. "That won't be necessary," she said, her voice carrying royal authority. "Master Ashford's work is valuable and will continue. As for propriety, I trust my own judgment on such matters. Are we understood, Lord Chancellor?" It was a direct challenge to Bevren's authority, and everyone present recognized it. The Chancellor's jaw tightened, but he bowed stiffly. "Of course, Your Highness. I merely sought to protect your reputation." My reputation requires no protection from a scholar doing his work. Seraphine's gaze swept the room, cold and commanding. Now, unless there are other matters of actual importance to discuss, I suggest we return to our meal. Conversation resumed, but the damage was done. Derin caught suspicious glances throughout the remainder of dinner. As the gathering finally dispersed, a servant pressed a note into his hand with practiced subtlety. The message was brief. My chambers. 1 hour. We need to talk. When Derin arrived, he found Seraphine pacing her private sitting room, still in her formal gown but with her composure visibly fraying. The moment the door closed, she crossed to him, taking his hands in hers with desperate intensity. They're watching us now, she said without preamble. Bevren suspects something, and he won't stop until he finds proof or drives you away. Either option serves his purpose, keeping me isolated, keeping me under the court's control. Then I should leave, Derin said, though the words tasted like ash. Tonight, before this gets worse. Before you're hurt by association with me. No. Her grip tightened. Derin, the curse is almost broken. I can feel it, like ice cracking before spring thaw. We're so close. If you leave now, if we stop, I don't know if I'll get another chance. The sorceress who cursed me is still alive, still connected to Bevren through the Duke's network. If they realize I'm healing, they might strengthen the curse or worse. What could be worse? Her eyes met his, filled with new fear she could finally fully experience. They could hurt you to isolate me again. Bevren has done it before, removed anyone who got too close, who made me feel even the slightest warmth. A kind tutor dismissed for incompetence. A childhood friend married off to a distant province. He's kept me frozen not just by curse but by loneliness. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when I've finally found something real. Derin cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she could now fully shed. Then what do? We finish this, Seraphine said with sudden determination. The curse breaks through genuine connection, through choosing love over fear, vulnerability over protection. Every moment we're together, every risk we take, weakens it further. She pulled him toward the windows where moonlight streamed across thick carpets. So let's not hide anymore. Let's not pretend. Let's break this curse completely, tonight, and deal with the consequences together. There was something fierce and beautiful in her expression, the woman she'd been before the curse fully emerging. Derin felt his own resolve crystallizing. They'd come too far, risked too much, felt too deeply to turn back now. Tell me what you need, he said. You, she answered simply. All of you. No more stolen moments or careful touches. I need to feel everything, completely, without reservation. She kissed him then, not gently but with 7 years of frozen hunger finally thawing. Derin responded in kind, his arms circling her waist as they stumbled backward toward the cushioned bench beneath the windows. They fell together in a tangle of formal clothes and desperate hands, mouths meeting again and again as years of loneliness dissolved between them. Seraphine's fingers worked at the buttons of his coat while his hands found the laces of her gown, both of them breathing hard, trembling with need and newness. When skin finally met skin, his palm against her bare shoulder, her fingers trailing down his chest, she gasped as though struck by lightning. I feel it, she breathed against his neck. The curse, it's shattering. I can feel it breaking apart. And she could. Warmth flooded through her in waves, each touch driving back more darkness, each kiss melting more ice. They learned each other slowly despite their urgency, discovering responses and pleasures with wonder. When Derin's mouth traced the line of her throat, she arched against him with a moan that was pure sensation. When her hands explored the muscles of his back, he shuddered and pulled her impossibly closer. They made love like two people finding their way home after being lost in winter, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence and heat. Seraphine wept and laughed and gasped, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of feeling everything after so long feeling nothing. Derin held her through it all, anchor and partner, discovering that his own heart had been waiting for exactly this woman, this moment, this impossible connection. Afterward, they lay tangled together on the bench cushions, her head on his chest, his fingers trailing patterns on her bare shoulder. Through the windows, stars wheeled overhead in their ancient dance, and Seraphine felt truly alive for the first time since her 17th birthday. "It's gone," she whispered in wonder, pressing her hand over her heart. "The curse is completely broken. I can feel everything: joy, fear, love, hope. All of it." Derin kissed her forehead, tightening his embrace. "So what happens now?" Before she could answer, the sharp sound of shattering glass echoed from somewhere in the palace, followed by screams. They sat up quickly, reaching for discarded clothes as alarm bells began to ring. The sorceress had felt her curse break, and she was coming to reclaim what had been taken from her. Love's true warmth. They barely had time to dress before Seraphine's door burst open. Her personal guard stood there, face pale with urgency. "Your Highness, we're under attack." A woman appeared in the throne room through dark magic. "She's demanding to see you." Seraphine and Derin exchanged glances, both understanding immediately. "Morvessa," Seraphine said, the name bitter on her tongue. "The sorceress who cursed me. She's come to finish what she started." They rushed through corridors filled with panicking servants and scrambling guards. The throne room doors stood open, frost creeping across the threshold like grasping fingers. Inside, a woman in midnight robes stood before the dais, her beauty terrible and cold, her hands crackling with dark energy. Lord Chancellor Bevren cowered near the walls with other court officials, and the handful of guards present had been frozen in place like statues. "Seraphine Wintermere," Morvessa's voice echoed unnaturally. "I felt my beautiful curse shatter. 7 years of perfect work, undone in a night. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Wouldn't come to correct this mistake?" "Your curse was broken through love," Seraphine called out, stepping into the throne room with Derin at her side despite his protests. "Through genuine connection. That's not a mistake, that's your magic being defeated by something stronger." Morvessa's laugh was sharp as breaking ice. "Love? You think love conquered my curse?" She gestured, and magical bindings wrapped around Derin, jerking him away from Seraphine and lifting him off the ground. He struggled against invisible chains as Morvessa approached him with predatory interest. "This common boy is your great love? Let's test that theory, shall we?" Dark energy gathered around her hands, pointed at Derin's chest. Seraphine felt terror spike through her, real, visceral fear for someone she loved. But beneath the fear, something else crystallized. 7 years of frozen isolation had taught her strength. 7 years of surviving despite numbness had forged her into something more resilient than Morvessa could have imagined. "You're right," Seraphine said calmly, walking toward the sorceress. "He's common. A cartographer from the southern valleys with no titles, no wealth, no political connections. By every court standard, he's unsuitable for me." She kept moving forward, drawing Morvessa's attention away from Derin. "But he saw me when I couldn't see myself. He held my hand when I couldn't feel. He taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing we can do." "How touching," Morvessa sneered, but Seraphine saw uncertainty flicker across her face. "Your curse was meant to isolate me, to make me impossible to love. But it failed. Not because of magic or destiny or fate, but because I chose to trust someone despite my fear. Because Derin chose to stay despite the danger." Seraphine stopped directly before the sorceress, her voice ringing with newfound conviction. "You wanted to freeze my heart, but you only taught me how much warmth matters. And now I choose that warmth over everything else." She reached out and took Morvessa's hand. The sorceress shrieked as warmth flooded through the contact, not painful but overwhelming, the opposite of her cold magic. Seraphine had spent 7 years as a vessel for freezing darkness. Now she'd become a conduit for its opposite. Every genuine emotion she'd rediscovered, every moment of connection with Derin, every act of vulnerability had filled her with a warmth that rejected Morvessa's power at its source. "Your curse made me stronger," Seraphine said as light began emanating from their joined hands. "It taught me what truly matters. And now your own magic is feeding mine." The dark bindings around Derin dissolved. The frozen guards thawed and stumbled. The frost creeping across the floor retreated like fog before sunrise. Morvessa tried to pull away, But Seraphine held firm, channeling everything she'd learned about warmth, connection, and the courage it takes to love openly. With a final cry, Morvessa wrenched free and vanished in a column of dark smoke, fleeing rather than face the power of what she'd unwittingly created. The throne room fell silent except for heavy breathing and the drip of melting ice. Derin ran to Seraphine, catching her as her knees buckled from exhaustion. She clung to him, trembling but triumphant. Around them, the court stared in shock. Their ice princess had just defeated a powerful sorceress through love rather than traditional magic. Lord Chancellor Bevren recovered first, his political instincts sharp despite his fear. "Your Highness, the people will need to understand what happened here. The scandal of your association with this commoner." "There is no scandal," Seraphine interrupted, straightening in Derin's arms but not pulling away. "Master Ashford helped me break a curse that your own Duke Malthrin commissioned. He risked his life to help me heal. And yes, I fell in love with him in the process." She looked around the assembled court, her voice clear and unwavering. "I am Crown Princess of Wintermere. I choose who I love. And I choose Derin Ashford." The declaration hung in the air, shocking and absolute. Murmurs rippled through the witnesses, but no one dared speak against her, not after what they'd just seen. Derin turned her to face him, his eyes searching hers. "Are you certain? You're choosing me over political alliances, over court approval, over everything they expect of you." "I'm choosing warmth over ice," Seraphine said softly, cupping his face. "I'm choosing love over fear. I'm choosing life over merely surviving. Yes, I'm certain. Are you?" In answer, he kissed her before the entire court, tender and sure, a promise and a proclamation. When they broke apart, Seraphine smiled, a real smile full of joy and hope, and the court saw their ice princess truly thaw for the first time. The aftermath took weeks to settle. Bevren resigned his position when his connections to Duke Malthrin's network came to light. The court gradually accepted what they couldn't prevent. Their princess had found love in the most unexpected place and had grown stronger for it. Derin continued his cartography work, but now as royal cartographer, mapping not just territories but new possibilities. On a spring morning 3 months later, Seraphine and Derin stood on the palace balcony watching the last snow melt from the mountains. She leaned against him, his arms wrapped around her waist, both of them warm despite the lingering chill. "I've been thinking about maps," she said thoughtfully. "Oh." He smiled against her hair. "You said cartographers can stand on the same mountain and draw completely different kingdoms. That maps are stories we tell ourselves." She turned in his embrace. "I think we drew a new map together, a new story about what my life could be. And it's so much better than the one I was living before." "We're still drawing it," Derin corrected gently. "Every day we're adding new details, new territories. Who knows what we'll discover?" Seraphine kissed him softly, tasting possibility and promise. "Then let's keep exploring together. No more frozen hearts, no more isolation. Just us, and whatever warmth we can create." They stood together as the sun climbed higher, two souls who'd found each other in winter and chosen to build their own spring. Proof that sometimes the coldest curses could be broken by the warmest hearts, and that love freely chosen was stronger than any magic meant to keep it away. The palace of Wintermere would never be the same. Neither would its princess, who'd learned that being touched by love, even accidentally, was the greatest gift she could have received, and that choosing to hold on to that love despite every obstacle was what finally set her free. Lessons from the frost-touched heart. 1. Vulnerability is strength, not weakness. Seraphine's curse tried to protect her through emotional isolation, but true strength came when she chose to be vulnerable with Derin. Opening your heart to others, despite the risk of pain, is one of the bravest acts we can perform. 2. Love requires choice and courage. The curse could only be broken by Seraphine's active choice to pursue connection despite her fears. Real love isn't something that just happens to us, it's something we choose daily, especially when choosing it feels risky or difficult. 3. Isolation protects nothing worth keeping. The forbidden touch rule was meant to protect Seraphine but actually imprisoned her. Sometimes the walls we build to keep pain out also keep joy, growth, and genuine connection from getting in. 4. True connection sees beyond surface labels. Derin didn't see the Ice Princess or the Crown Princess. He saw Seraphine, the person. Similarly, she saw him as more than just a cartographer. Authentic relationships happen when we look past titles, reputations, and social roles to see the real person underneath. 5. Small acts can have profound consequences. An accidental touch changed everything. We never know which small moment of connection, a kind word, a helping hand, a moment of genuine attention, might be exactly what someone needs to begin healing. 6. Healing takes time and patience. The curse didn't break in one dramatic moment but gradually, through repeated connection. Real emotional healing is usually a process, not an event, requiring patience both with ourselves and with others. 7. Others' cruelty says more about them than about you. Morvessa cursed Seraphine out of spite when rejected. The curse was never about Seraphine's worth, it reflected the sorceress's own darkness. How others treat us often reveals their character, not our value. 8. Love flourishes in authenticity, not perfection. Seraphine and Derin didn't wait until circumstances were perfect. They built their relationship in stolen moments, hidden meetings, and imperfect conditions. Real love grows when we show up honestly, not when everything is ideal. 9. Sometimes breaking rules is necessary for growth. The forbidden touch was an unjust rule that perpetuated Seraphine's suffering. Sometimes personal growth requires us to question and break rules that no longer serve us, even when society says we shouldn't. 10. Standing up for love requires public courage. The private moments between Seraphine and Derin were beautiful, but the curse only fully broke when she publicly declared her choice before the court. Sometimes we must be willing to defend our love openly, not just cherish it privately.